Okay, so this video, I hope you're watching it and you can't see my eyes. The reason for that is I want you to judge it. You know, the eyes are the window to the soul. And when people see eyes, they right away judge the person. But here I want you to judge the content. And the question is very simple. Are these ideas political correct, or are they actually political lies? You see, what really occurred is there are certain groups, certain individuals with certain desires, and they were always considered to be queer, or the desire is quite simply, in the case of Arabs wanting to murder the Jews, they created 3 wars, and their stated goal was to murder every single Jew. So obviously it was evil. But there's one nation that is expert at lies. That nation is Russia, because Russia, as opposed to all other countries that have a stated position and say it, Russia, the way they work, even in their own country, is something called disinformation. Now, hey, if you had this, you'd be drinking it too. Now, disinformation, if you look at the book called Disinformation, which was written by the former head of the KGB of Romania. So that's a seriously authoritative source. He was in direct contact with Andropov, who was the KGB head in Moscow. So disinformation is a real art, and I in fact know somebody who's a low-level KGB operative, but he said exactly how it works. And this is exactly what they did. They take an idea, and let's say the idea is, I'm just going to say something that nobody thinks of, so it will be understood. But let's say something as evil as cannibalism. And so obviously our society says, well, that's completely evil. But then they'll have one person who is a cannibal. The guy's sick. But they'll have some kind of crazy magazine, I don't know, some far, UFO magazine, write an article about him as if it's normal. Like he'll say why he does it, da da da. And then another magazine, a more respectable magazine like Time magazine, picks up that article, because that's really how the news outlets work. They just look for what is news. How do they know what's news? There are billions of information. They look at what everyone else is doing. So they look at this thing and they, oh, that's going to get it eyeballs, and that's what they're into. So they write an article, but suddenly when they write an article, it becomes an accepted thing, because they make it look, well, if they're acceptable, then the practice must be acceptable. And so that's how lies enter the society. And so let's begin with the first one, which is gay. Now, I remember when it was not acceptable to be a gay in America. And again, how did it happen? It happened through the media. Now, remember Russia. And again, this guy writes about this in the book Disinformation. You should read the book if you want any idea on how we got to where we got to. Russia put in decades, not maybe generations, of disinformation about gay. So you ask yourself a question, why were they so into making everyone accept gay? Now, in Russia, they're against it, but everywhere in the world they did it. Why? Because there's a certain percentage of the population, they say about 3%, who have this, which they call queer. It's obviously bizarre. It's not normal. As a psychiatrist once told me, if you have, 100 goats, and 97% of them act in one way, and three out of 97 act different, well, there's something wrong with them. But be that as it may, they promoted this because this obviously has led to people, even straight people, not wanting to get married and not feeling so important about marriage and not having children, and that's going to destroy the society from within. There are many European countries, based on statistics, a country has to have at least 1.8 children per woman to continue. They don't have it. And after a certain point, like 1.6, you can't even replace it. It's not feasible. So basically, Russia wanted to destroy the West. They thought that the West was their enemy. They were communists. And so they did everything in their power to destroy the West. And they succeeded. So should not think that they have not succeeded. If you think that being gay is an alternative to being straight, it's the same thing. Let's analyze it from 3 simple ways. First of all, being straight is a man and a woman. Being gay is a man and a man. It's not the same thing. Being straight allows you to have children. Being gay does not allow you to have children. And last but not least, the whole idea of marriage is that you are committed to the other person. You're monogamous. The average gay person has 300 stands, which is disgusting. And even in their average marriage, which lasts for 6 months, they still do not believe in monogamy. It has nothing to do with it. Their lifestyle tells them that no, they should do with whatever they want, whoever they want. So it has no comparison whatsoever. And so this is a lie. Let's look at the next thing, transgender. It's amazing that we even have to talk about this. So again, this is all Russian disinformation to confuse people. But the bottom line is, like, if you think that, let's say, a dog is a cat, then maybe a woman can be a man. But obviously a dog is not a cat. And if you think that what makes a cat is only the fact that it looks like a cat, but if you had plastic surgery and it looked like a dog, it would suddenly become a dog, then you're an idiot. Because what makes a dog is its behaviors based on its instincts. And what makes a cat is its behaviors based on its instincts. And so if you think that men and women are the same, well, they're not. Even male and female rats are different. Women rats can give birth. And more importantly, they have a tendency to nurture, as women, mammals, and women do. They have that nurturing tendency. If they have stress, they produce oxytocin, which is the desire to kind of be loved and hugged and held. And that's a very important thing because they have this ability to give that. And men produce basically testosterone, which is more of a dominant gene. And going further, never mind the fact that being male or female is in every part of the DNA of the body, which I don't know, when your DNA was created, was there kind of a gender bias? I mean, it's just so stupid. And last but not least, but the brains are different. A male and female brain is different. And those differences are what make the man or the woman. The male brain has more what's called in Kabbalah chachma. It's more innovative. Its right side, it has about 10 times more, I think, gray matter. And the woman's brain has 10 times more white matter. And that makes a massive difference. The white matter is more your logical. That's your left side. It's the connection. It's more interconnected between the two parts. So, of course, if you're saying something positive about women, then you can say it. But if you're saying that it's different, the whole thing is just a lie. It doesn't make any sense. As one psychiatrist, a lady from the Mayo Clinic, which is from the top clinics in our country, said that, she said, you could just as much fix the mental issue of a male thinking he's a female by a sex change as making, let's say, a woman who has what do you call it? They have that disease where they think they're fat when they're skinny. I forgot what it's called. By liposuction. So imagine you give the person liposuction. It's something in the mind. It has nothing to do with reality. So that's another lie. Let's look at the thing of atheists. So this is a big one. Atheists. Right. So again, now we have to understand that, again, this was a Russian thing. They're very into atheism because Karl Marx, the nutcase that created communism, he said religion is the opiate of the masses. And the bottom line is that this war is so over. I mean, 64% of the world not only believe in God, they believe they have a personal relationship with God. And if you think that the majority of the world, that's 64%, that's not 51%, that's 64%. You cannot say that the vast majority of the world who experiences a personal relationship with God are all delusional, and you're, or whatever, are somehow the genius that is smarter than them all. Furthermore, there was a very well-researched book by Jim Clifton, CEO of Gallup Polls. And these are massive, massive, well-researched books, hundreds of thousands of questions. With the way it works with a poll, the more people you ask, the more verified is the information. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of questions in like 40 different countries, and 84% of the world believes in a higher power. I guess it's not necessarily the same as personal God, but 84% of the world believes in a higher power. In terms of scientists, 2/3 of scientists believe in God, right? Einstein was a major believer in God and a personal God. So the fact of the matter is, and again, this is a stupid Russian disinformation, and and basically a lot of times people try to get into this thing because there are two reasons. The first is that some people want, again, sex is a very powerful drive, and they think that if they can get rid of the belief in God, then they can do whatever they want. And the second is that it's tribal. Again, a lot of the things that people believe is because they want to be part of a group. And this group thinks in a certain way, so they don't want to think differently. But if anyone thinks that science disproves God, they obviously have no idea about science. So, because the fact is, I'm just going to say one thing, which is a total proof of God, and that's quantum physics. According to quantum physics, as we've just spoken, the world has been reborn billions of times. So every single atom disappears and reappears. That means you and me in this very moment disappeared and reappeared billions of times. And that's basic science. So the question is, A, how did it appear in the first place? From where did it come? And remember, every single second is like the first second. It's coming out of nothing. It doesn't come out of something. It comes out of nothing. And if it comes out of nothing and it's organized, there has to be a brilliant mind that puts it all together. It can't just happen. And the more science you realize, and I heard this from a guy who has 3 PhDs. I don't know how many people in the world have 3 PhDs. He's the head of all the studies of the universities of Switzerland. He told this to me personally. He went around the world, told me he was the highest paid student in the world. He went around the entire world. And he was paid to just get the latest research. And every single field, we know now that we have no idea what's going on. So what is this guy with 3 PhDs who comes back after going to the whole world, all the university professors, the highest field, like the best in all their fields, what his teaching was the limit of human intelligence. And I'll give you one example, and that is DNA. I heard this from a student in the top university into research of DNA. As we speak right now, every single second, you have about 1 million red blood cells that are born. 1 million. About 1 million that die, 1 million that are born. So that means around the world and in animals, there's an untold number of red blood cells every single second. We're talking about a number that you can't even imagine being born. We don't know how a single cell is born, right? It's like, imagine an encyclopedia that splits into half. Literally, it splits into half. And each half then creates, out of thin air, creates the other half. It's, again, I heard this from a student in the top university. We have no idea. How do those letters come together? Nobody knows. And that's happening all the time. So there's a superpower which creates every single detail of reality. So the idea that there is atheism, somehow this all happens without a mind, is another lie spread by our good friends in Russia that basically are out of their minds. Now, let's go to some ideas. These are homegrown insanities. These are special insanities. The idea of reparations. So, I have a grandfather who he lost his entire family. His mother, his siblings, out of a massive family, hundreds of people, only 3 survived. So should he get reparations from Germany? So first of all, answer is, sorry, he can't get reparations from Germany. There were some people that were put into slave labor camps, within concentration camps, that got reparations. Okay, but let's say for example, my grandfather could, because that was a horrible loss. He lost his whole family, murdered by a nation. Question is, should I get reparations? So the answer is, of course I shouldn't get reparations. And that answers the question of reparations. Again, reparations is an insanity by people that are insane. Now, I have another question. May blacks loot when mistreated? Let's use the same example. So, let's say there's, God forbid, and it happens in America, a Jew is beat up. Okay? Can I go and beat up other people? Can I go, break Best Buy and steal its stuff? It's insanity. It's pure insanity. Okay, let's continue. Anti-business. Now this is a special one. People also don't realize that this comes from Russia. So, Russia, one of its big things was anti-capitalism. That's the whole idea of communism. Now, a big reason there are people that are against wealth is actually they're just jealous of it. There's a book that was written called The Israel Test. And the basic idea is that the people that hate Jews and Americans, which are the same people, they're basically jealous. And a person that's jealous is basically miserable. And people that are miserable are jealous of happy people. And happiness comes from love. And everybody wants to be loved. But a lot of people have been shamed. They've been sort of cast aside. Or they've been made to feel that way, and they believed it. And so what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that it is jealousy of wealth. So, you see, Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, one of the greatest Jewish geniuses, and of course, there were millions of them. So when we say one of the greatest, he was like unbelievable. He makes Einstein look like an idiot. So he said, what's the difference between somebody who loves truth or hates falsehood? So he answered, the person who loves truth doesn't rest until he finds the truth. The person who hates falsehood doesn't rest until he finds falsehood. You see, it's an emotional bias. When I love someone, they say love is blind. So, love is blind, but so is hate. Hate is blind too. And the reason I hate someone is because they bother me. And so, just like love is blind, hate is blind. And when I hate someone, just like when I love someone, I see what's good in them and I ignore what's bad. When I hate someone, I see what's bad in them and I ignore what's good. And so there are many people that are jealous. They are basically narcissists. They have delusions of grandeur because they have shame. What happens is when we are shamed, not by ourselves, that's depression, but shamed by others, we feel it's not true, we create, if we think that the other person is nuts, then we just ignore it, like Jews getting shamed. It's like, well, the guy's a nutcase that's shaming me because he obviously is whatever, he's an anti-Semite, he's just a nut. But if it's a person who we take serious, let's say it's a parents often shame their children, they could also be jealous. And then we say, okay, well, they're right. So now we have to prove that we're good. So our mind creates a delusion. It's called narcissistic personality disorder based on narcissistic wounding, which is a nice way of saying my ego was hurt. And so my ego becomes delusional. And it thinks that it is the best in the world. And then once it thinks it's the best, it becomes jealous, like mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all? It's jealous of anybody that it sees as being better than it. So because I think I'm the best, so I deserve to be the most famous. And why are you, like Obama said about business people. You didn't create it. Well, what do you care if the guy did create it? What difference does it make to you? Who the hell are you to tell someone what they did or they didn't do? He's busy telling everybody what they can do. But that's the nature of a narcissist, because they believe that they're the best and the whole world has to listen to them. That's just their madness. And so the idea of being anti-wealth, first of all, was very much influenced by communist Russia, but it's also a very natural thing that people that are jealous, and what they do, again, they don't make the world better for the poor. Right? Obama didn't create a society, didn't create wealth for the poor. What he did is he destroyed wealth for the rich. And the same thing was communism. It didn't create wealth for the poor. It didn't make the poor any richer. In fact, it made them poorer. It made everyone desperate, standing in bread lines. But it did destroy the rich. And that was their goal. Remember what Menachem Mendel said. What's the difference, and it says it also like this, between a lover of love and a hater of hate? Is a hater of hate finds hate. The lover of love finds love. And that's really the two kinds of people in the world. You have positive people and you have negative people. And positive people see positivity in everything. And negative people see negativity in everything. And the same person, basically, this is very interesting. Why are we positive or negative? Well, it depends on our emotions. When we're feeling good, then we like to feel good. But when we're feeling miserable, we become jealous of people that are feeling good. And the mind, literally, I had this in myself when I went through a very difficult time. I start seeing evil in others and start condemning them. Oh, you're this, you're that. Now, the same people, I don't see evil in them anymore. Actually, I'm not as naive. I don't think they're all so righteous. But I'm not upset by them. Why? Because I'm not upset at myself. I'm happy. So happy people are happy for others. It's only miserable people that are jealous of others. And therefore, this is very dangerous, by the way. Look at what happened in Venezuela. I have a nephew that comes from there. And I asked him, what happened? So Venezuela was a super rich country. They're super rich in oil. So first they elected, like we've just elected, socialists. I wouldn't say whatever. Basically, socialism is about, the people, the poor people. But it's not really about the poor people. It's against the wealthy people. If you just read the Democratic National Charter, you'll see that's what it is. And they're going to make the wealthy people, businesses, crazy. And if they don't have the ability to make money, then everybody loses. It's very simple. So is it true anti-business, or is it a lie? The answer is it is a lie. Let's go to two more anti-Israel. Again, this was very much Russian disinformation. Russia was anti-Israel because Stalin, Yamach Shemai V'Zichri, who actually killed two of my great-grandparents, Stalin was a big anti-Semite. And he killed 26 million people. So that's the kind of person you're taking your anti-Israel from. You're taking it from Arafat, right, the PLO, who was trained by the Nazis, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is exactly where Arafat came from. In fact, according to Egypt, where the Muslim Brotherhood started, Obama was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of the things that he did was very, very similar. He certainly put the Muslim Brotherhood into power in Egypt. And the bottom line is that's basically what the PLO is. It's a terrorist organization. This is kind of the Palestinian Authority. Mohammed Abbas got his degree in which he denied the Holocaust in Russia. So Russia was funding the PLO. And that's exactly what happened. I know Russia won't like me saying this, but it's like if you do evil, right, eventually the truth comes out. And why don't you just come out and tell everyone the truth instead of trying to cover up? It doesn't work. Eventually, the truth always comes out. And so, basically, the people that are anti-Israel are Nazis. That's all they are. If you say you feel bad for Palestinians, which actually never existed, the first line of the Palestinian Charter is that a Palestinian is an Arab. And listen, an Arab comes from Arabia. A Jew comes from Judea. The lands that are under contention is Judea, right? So how do people that come from Arabia make claim to land in Judea? And if you say they speak Hebrew, well, they don't speak Hebrew. They speak Arabic. They're pure Arabs. They have nothing to do with Palestine. The only thing they have to do is that when the Jews came back to the swamp-ridden and malaria-infested land, and through their hard work and labor, they drained the swamps. You just read Mark Twain. He went there. He says, you go for 50 miles, you didn't see anyone. Furthermore, I have a great aunt who is there. She brought actually postcards from ancient Israel. If I can bring them and put them on, I'll show you. These postcards show clearly these were two-horse towns. Nobody was living there till the Jews came in the 1850s, and then the Arabs came for jobs, and then the Muslim Brotherhood under, this is very important, again, this guy, Ian Pacepa, who wrote the book Disinformation, personally trained Arafat, that's the head of the whole Palestinian organization. They created the Palestinian on the lie that there was an Arab nation. That even the Arafat before had never said that there was a Palestinian people. They were just Arabs. We're going to kill the Jews. That's what we're going to do. Why? Because that's what Arabs do. We hate the Jews. They've been hated. They're trying to kill us for 4,000 years. Nothing's changed. And so this whole idea that there was a Palestinian state is complete Russian disinformation. It's a complete lie. And on the simple level, even if you do think it's true, well, don't you think Jewish refugees of the Holocaust also deserve a state? So it shows that you've just been brainwashed into a stupid lie. And the last thing that we're going to discuss is open borders. So as we speak right now, as I said, I don't know when this poll was from. It's a while ago. There are 150 million people who want to come to America. If you open up the borders tomorrow, we're not talking about yesterday, we're talking about tomorrow, you will have 150 million people here. Now, is that a problem? So, I don't know. I mean, let's talk about some of these people. Let's talk about Hezbollah. Hezbollah, more than they hate Israel, they hate you, right? Why do people create 9/11? They hate you. They want to kill you. They call Hezbollah is funded by Iran. They call Israel the small Satan. You are the big Satan. If they could, they'd nuke you right now. The women, as we know in Germany, they have all these Arabs, and they bring with them a very great kind of anti-women bias. They're raping women in disgusting ways. So this is a situation we already have. It started in America. I mean, really, I'm going to be very frank with you. From a rational perspective, enough people have been brainwashed, certainly the younger people, that, and this is what happens to empires, is that you have it so good, you don't understand that there's evil. You don't understand that there are people that want to kill you. There are at least 1 billion people that want to kill you. And I'll give you a simple proof. When 9/11 happened, when they literally killed 5,000 Americans, innocent people, and they put two planes, they basically blew themselves up just to kill people. How many people in the Muslim world were happy about that? That means they celebrate your death. 700 million. Because there are 700 million that are called Salafists. These people are, that means traditional Muslims. And the Salafists have been influenced by Saudi Arabia, which is called Wahhabism. Wahhabism is a new strain of Islam, and it is the most radical strain because Islam itself, I read the Quran, and I very much encourage all people to read the Quran. If you want to understand a people, you have to read their book. So Muhammad, based on one of the greatest doctors in history, was insane. And I started to read the Quran, and I realized my head is spinning. I realized, why is my head spinning? And I realized because the guy's contradicting himself. The sky is black, the sky is blue. In the same sentence, he contradicts himself. In fact, Islam says if there's any contradiction in the book, it is a false book. The book is full of contradictions. In the beginning, he says Islam is through peace, and then he calls over 30 times to murder Muslims and Jews and Christians. That's in his book, in their Bible. Imagine the Bible calls to murder Muslims. Terrible. They call openly to murder Muslims and Christians, Jews and Christians over 30 times. So you're talking about people that believe this. Remember, there are some people that they say not to read the Quran because the Quran can only read it in Arabic. That's their thing. So the average Muslim has no idea what his own book says. His leaders do, but he does not. So the leaders are teaching them to murder. They're saying, okay, well, if you're teaching me to murder. Now, it's not to say that a lot of Muslims are very good people because they don't know their own religion. I don't want to go too deep. There are many people that are greater experts than me in this. But there's Robert Spencer. You should look at his videos. He's very good. He's a great expert. But the bottom line is this, that the strain of Wahhabism, which is part of Sunni Islam, Sunnis are larger. There's 1.2 billion Sunnis. There are 200 million Shiites. So Iran is the Shiite, and they're freaking mad. And now you've got the other strain, Wahhabism. Remember, I think it was 16 out of 17 or whatever suicide bombers were Saudi Arabian, and it was sponsored by Saudi Arabia. So these people have influenced 80% of the mosques around the world, or at least in the West, are sponsored by Saudi Arabia, right here in the U.S. And what do they teach? They teach the Saudi Arabia version of Islam. And what is that? Murder, murder, murder. So Saudi Arabia, on one hand, I mean, the truth be told, it seems that they're reconciling a little bit with Israel, but they can never get rid of Wahhabism. It's embedded into their culture. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it's 100% embedded. They can't get rid of it. They're literally married to it. They cannot get rid of that culture. And also, a fact of the matter is they may be right. Because based on Islam, if you read the Quran, that's exactly what he says to do. So it's Islam itself can't get rid of terrorism, because it says very clearly to do it. So this is a big issue. And, you know, the fact is that countries, and this is empires, we're not the only time, you know, there are many empires that come and go. They last about 200 years. Why? Because the people that grow up in them, they grow up in the safety. They don't understand evil. They don't understand that, you know, your death would be celebrated by 1 billion people, right? That's just the Wahhabis. I'm not going to go into others. I don't want to shame others. But trust me, 1 billion people would be very happy if you were killed. And so we are talking about a situation in which we have a generation that's been brainwashed. And there's only one solution. The one solution is to give your life to God. Because the only one that's going to save you is God. God in 1 second can change the world. And the final, I'm going to conclude with the final reality, which is every single generation has a Messiah, has a Mashiach. The Mashiach is here. Our generation is certainly the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who qualified, as the Rambam says, a great leader who builds the Jewish people, and who he brought a lot of the peace, the reconciliation with Russia. I was in South Africa, and I know clearly that he was one of the greatest reasons why South Africa went from apartheid to a peaceful country to not being a racist country. And so the bottom line is that we have to grow if you want to be normal, because the only information that makes people normal and made society normal is you have to read the Bible, you have to go to Chabad.org, you go to my website, KabbalahWisdom.org, you have to study the Torah, develop a relationship with God, ask God, listen, this is an amazing thing, ask God what to do, and the first reply is his answer. You are standing, basically, I'm going to conclude with this, the previous Rebbe, this was one of the great potential messiahs of his generation, he said like this, he says, right now we're right before the complete greatest revolution that will ever come, which is the coming of the Mashiach. Just like the Jews came out of Egypt, all these miracles will be amazing. The whole world is going to change overnight. He said, it used to be like a train was going between two cities. So basically people were like sort of religious or not so religious. But basically their standards were similar. You got married, you had children, you believed not to steal. They were normal. All people were basically normal. Now, it's like the train is going into the city. There are 1,000 stops. There are crazy ideologies. You want to be smart? There's only one way. There's no two ways. There's one way. And the Kabbalah, the book of Jewish mysticism, predicted this. Remember this from thousands of years ago. It says like this, if you wish to be sane before the coming of the Mashiach, you will have to use the wisdom in your inner heart.